So I'll go ahead and start. So I'll close this out. So today I'm going to be talking about composting, everything related to composting. And I should mention, my name is Xinci. I also work for Zero Waste Sonoma. So the first thing I want to just mention today, as we go along, when I say organic, what I mean is in the chemical definition of containing carbon. And not so much organic agriculture, which when people think organic, they think like, oh, I want to buy organic produce, which is a standard from the USDA that kind of restricts the use of chemical pesticides or fertilizers in growing food. So that is, the agricultural definition is not what we're talking about today. Today we're just talking about organic. When I say organic, it just means containing carbon, so anything that has been alive. Okay, so I also wanted to touch on, when we talk about composting, there are two different kinds of composting. So a lot of people are very familiar, especially here in Sonoma County, with home composting, which is much lower temperature, so 90 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Generally, you can only put in vegetative food scraps and yard trimmings, but you can't put in meat or bones. And it's very hyper-local because obviously, you have it in your backyard. And the amount of time that you need to compost is very short. So 1 to 12 months or more. The time to compost is very long, rather, because the piles are smaller, the temperature is lower, so it takes a longer time to compost. However, it is very low tech, right? All you need is human labor, so to turn it, and you don't need any really special equipment, you just need a shovel.
Xinci, is there anything that we should avoid putting in a home compost pile?
Yeah, so in a home compost pile, generally you don't want to put meat, bones, or anything like too greasy, because that tends to attract raccoons or rats or other pests like roaches. So only vegetative food scraps and plant trimmings. Yeah. Whereas on the other hand, industrial composting, which is when you put your food or your yard debris into the green bin at your curb and Recology services it, that is going to be industrial composting, and that is much more large scale. So the composting process is a lot hotter, so it's 120 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit, and because of that higher temperature, it's a lot faster, and you can break down a lot of other kinds of food and kill pathogens that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do with home composting. So in your curbside green bin, I always want to remind people you can put in meat, bones, dairy, any food, your leftovers, turkey, into your green bin, because when it goes to the facility, it is going to break down with that higher temperature, and the bacteria like E. coli, salmonella, they're all going to get killed. So as I mentioned, it's much faster process, so the time for composting to finish is 2 to 6 months. And the bad part of it is that it is, although it is consolidated, it's usually, these facilities are very large and they're hard to permit and they're expensive, so they tend to be very far away. So I'll kind of touch on where our food goes in Sonoma County. And so it's not local, it's not as local as home composting. And as I mentioned, it is expensive because it requires a lot of equipment and technology. Oh, one thing is, I do want to mention, it's kind of hard to see this link, but there is a link up top there to show a video of Napa recycling, so you can see what the composting process looks like. So just a couple of pictures. I think most people are familiar with this, but home composting, generally there are two kinds. So one on the left, that picture is a worm bin, and so this is ideal for generally people who have less space. Like, you could even keep your worm bin in a closet or under the sink, and it's a colder process because the worms are just kind of digesting everything, but it's not really heating up. And then on the right side is a hot backyard compost pile. You can either do the lasagna method, which is a colder method, it's slower, or you can do an active turn compost with your shovel, and that promotes the oxygen flow, it promotes bacteria growth, and so it's hotter, it's faster, but still not as fast as industrial composting. So with both of these, again, I will emphasize you can only put vegetative food scraps, so no meat, bones, or dairy. So on the other hand, municipal or industrial composting, like I said, is very large scale. So you can see these piles are huge, right? They're as big as houses. And so because of that large size, and there are pipes running underneath that supply oxygen, the bacteria is very active, and that is what is creating the heat that allows the food to break down very quickly. So with these piles, they are either turned or turned for the oxygen, or they have pipes underneath. And you can see, for example, the lower picture, there is a big mechanical loader that they use to pick up the material of the turned material. So now I want to talk more about what happens here in Sonoma County. When you put your food scraps or your yard debris into your green bin, you know, this is a very common question that we get. It's like, what happens to it? Where does it go? So for us here in Sonoma County, we have had our program for quite some time, which is, I would say, more advanced than even the rest of the state or the country. So in 1985 was when the Sonoma Compost Facility opened. And in 1993, they started taking in residential municipal material. So the time in between 1985 and 93, they were just taking in self-haul, which just means like landscapers drove their own material to the facility and dropped it off. That was all they were composting. But in 1993, they started contracting with a company like Recology to pick up from people's curbsides. So they started in 1993 for residential curbside collection of just yard and wood debris, so no food. And then in 2002, they started accepting vegetative food scraps in addition to the yard debris. 2006, they started commercial organics collection, so that means like restaurants, supermarkets, big businesses that produce more material. And for the commercial material, they were also just accepting vegetative food scraps, so no meat, bones, or dairy at that point. In 2015, unfortunately, the Sonoma Compost Facility did close down for a variety of reasons, and we no longer had a composting facility, an industrial size facility in Sonoma County. So since then, we have been trucking out all of this material to Mendocino, Marin, and Napa counties. And the only good thing to happen from this is the 3 facilities that we use currently do accept all food scraps. So previously Sonoma Compost was just vegetative food scraps, but now the 3 facilities that we use, even though they're out of the county, accept meat, bones, and dairy. And I included a link here in case people were interested in why Sonoma Compost shut down. There was a grand jury report that was published. So this gives you kind of a snapshot, an idea of what it looks like in Sonoma County. So in 2022, the organics collection program, we had produced about 83,000 tons just from residents. So this is picked up from the curbside. And then commercial, like I said, businesses and debris boxes, which are those big roll-off containers, was about 30,000 tons. So as you can see, most of the accounts, most of the customers that are using these green bins are single-family residents, with a smaller proportion of multifamily, so like apartments and condominiums, and commercial accounts. And in the map on the right-hand side, the 3 red pinpoints are where the composting facilities we're using currently, and they are all outside of Sonoma County. The yellow pinpoint is where the commercial material goes to. So the commercial material from businesses is generally much more food heavy, whereas residential material is much more yard debris, woody material. And that really matters because when you have more food, there's more moisture, whereas the woody material, it's a lot drier and tends to be less garbage. It's a lot cleaner than commercial. So this is another question that we get all the time when people find out, oh my goodness, you're trucking all of this material outside of Sonoma County. Why don't we have a facility in Sonoma County? Well, we're working on it. I mean, it's since 2015 when Sonoma Compost shut down. Zero Waste Sonoma has been working with the County of Sonoma to try to build a new facility, but the problem is it's very difficult to find an appropriate site because you require like a land that's not too close to a lot of residential neighborhoods, and it's a big project, so you have to get all these permits. And so right now we do have a very exciting and very promising project. It's by the Sonoma County Airport, and it's on top of the closed landfill that the county already owns. So it's really nice because we don't have to worry about buying that land. It already is owned by the county. And because it's a closed landfill, that land is just sitting there. It's not being used for anything productive. So it would be great if we could put a compost facility on top of it. So just very recently, the County of Sonoma and Zero Waste Sonoma had a team of panelists to review several proposals made by engineering firms. And we have selected one just a couple weeks ago to do 30% engineering of the facility and permitting. So that contract is going to be announced publicly at the Board of Supervisors meeting in January of 2024. So that facility we're planning to permit to compost 75,000 tons every year. The other project that's happening in Sonoma County is one that we are not involved with. It is an independently run project, and it's called Sage Gulch Organics. So it's by Lakeville Highway. It's on private land, and they're in the permitting process, but it's kind of slow going. And they are hoping to build a much larger facility because they have a big plot of land, so 185,000 tons per year.
Question.
Yeah.
The 75,000 tons per year for the Sonoma County Zero Waste Sonoma project, is that plenty to serve Sonoma County? Is that more than enough?
Yeah, good question. So that facility is not going to be able to process all of the material that's being produced in Sonoma County. So in this previous slide, as you can see, combined residential and commercial material is over 100,000 tons every year. So we will, even with this new facility, if it is able to be built, we will still have to outhaul some of the material, most likely to Marin because that's the closest facility. But some, local composting is better than nothing. So, and that's the reason why it's being permitted for 75,000 tons is because we're limited by the space of the land, of course. Yeah. Okay, so I think most people are, relatively familiar with the concept of like composting being a good thing. But I find that some people maybe don't understand how it really relates to climate change and like why compost is a climate solution. So I wanted to touch on this a little bit. At its very most basic level, the reason composting is so important and such a good solution for climate change is because, well, number one, you're keeping all that material out of landfills. So as, was it Sloan, you were talking about landfills, how once items go in there, they never really come out. They're just sitting there for hundreds of years. And this is the same with organic materials, right? Because composting is a very oxygen-dependent process. So in a landfill, there is no oxygen, so it can't really break down very well. So if it goes, any sort of food or your yard debris goes in the landfill, it's just sitting there. Even worse is when it does break down, it creates methane and other greenhouse gases, which contribute to making climate change worse. So, when you compost materials, composting food and yard debris, you're keeping it out of the landfill, which is great. And obviously this composting process is a natural process. It cycles the nutrients through the environment as nature intended. So that's what we're really trying to get back to. And then the flip side of it, or kind of, I mean, related, why compost is good for the environment is when you use compost, it helps plants grow bigger. And what happens, you know, when we all learned about photosynthesis in grade school, right? And the whole idea is that the plants take the heat from the sun, which is energy, and they take carbon dioxide that we breathe out, and they make that into sugar. And you can think of it as like we're growing plants or growing fruit, right? That's sugar. Or we're growing leaves and like tree bark. It's like a magical process, right? Like they're taking air and they're taking sunlight and they're making something solid. And so that when you have plants grow bigger, obviously you're taking that carbon dioxide, all those greenhouse gases from the atmosphere, which are bad for climate change, and you're instead growing bigger plants. So that's like a very simplified, you know, version of compost. But there are also other benefits to using compost on your soil that maybe are not as obvious, in that it really improves the soil health. So, you know, people generally understand, like, when you put compost on your soil, it becomes a lot darker, right? It's when you have poor soil, it's generally very light colored, it's sandy, doesn't really hold a lot of moisture. But with compost, when you add it in, it becomes darker, you can hold a lot of water, which is obviously good when you're planting plants. And then, of course, part of the reason that happens is a lot of the microorganisms benefit from the compost. They're really happy in that environment. So compost is all around a good thing. One thing I did want to mention, which is very interesting, so just south of here in Marin, there is an ongoing research study that has shown the benefits of using compost. So in this picture, what they did was they applied a single layer of compost 1 inch thick on this piece of land, and over 7 years, or maybe even more than that now, they have been measuring not only the amount of carbon dioxide that land is pulling from the atmosphere, but also how that affects the plant growth, the grass. So you can see this really nicely visually depicted, because obviously when you have more grass being grown, then you have more cows that are attracted to eat that grass. So when you can see the leftmost box is they plowed it and they applied compost. The second box from the left, they only plowed it, no compost. And then the third box was just compost, no plow. And the control on the very right side, they didn't do anything at all. So you can see both boxes with the compost, the grass is a lot greener, it's a lot thicker, and so you see that from the density of the cows. More cows are attracted to those plots. So compost is a good thing. Here are a few other pictures to kind of show you visually the effects that compost has on plants. So, you know, root growth, like I said, it really helps with growing this really dense root structure on plants. So on the left and the bottom picture, you can see the root growth is really nice versus, you know, no compost, the root growth is more minimal. And then on the top right-hand corner is an image from Soil Haiti, which is a organization. They use compost to grow plants there as well, and the leftmost pot has the compost, whereas the other ones were either control or didn't have compost in them. Okay. Another common thing that I often get questions about is people hear a lot about these countertop compost bins, and the most popular one that I've heard of is called Lomi. And you know, they say, oh, it will compost your food scraps in a day, like 24 hours. You got compost, you can put that in your garden, it's great. Well, it's not composting, because composting, the process does not happen that quickly. There's no way they can compost it in a day. Really what is happening with these machines is that they have a blender, like a blade inside, that macerates it. It really cuts all the food scraps into small little pieces, and it is usually a plug-in, so that heat dries out the food scraps. So all you have at the end of it is not compost, it is just dried and cut up food. So the pictures on the bottom you can see is an experiment someone did to show that this food, when you put it into your garden or you put it into your potted plants, it just grows mold. And normal compost, like finished compost, does not grow mold because it's all decomposed already, and it's just very rich in the nutrients, and everything is the nutrients are all like stable, whereas this is just food, and it's gonna kill your plants, honestly, because it's just gonna grow moldy. So this is not composting, despite what they market that machine as. So just be very wary. I don't think it's worth your money. Don't do this. Okay, so now moving on to this law that everybody has mostly heard about. It's called SB 1383. It's a state law, also called the Short-Lived Climate Pollutants Law. And it's a very big, comprehensive law that really touches all sectors in California, has really wide-ranging impacts. And really, the impetus for the state passing this law was because of climate change. California wanted to do its part in trying to mitigate climate change, and the lowest hanging fruit that they saw was obviously the food and all of these organic materials that are going to landfill, creating greenhouse gases. And so if we just get that food out of the landfill, that would do so much towards our climate goals. So the pie chart in the middle shows they have done multiple waste assessments, essentially going through and taking samples from the garbage to see what makes up that garbage. And you can see, I mean, probably 70% of what we throw into the garbage can be composted or otherwise used beneficially. And food, paper, all these compostable items make up a big part of it. And then the other part of the law was to address food insecurity. So in California, even though we're such a rich state, there are a lot of people who go hungry. So what does this law do? Generally, the overarching two statewide goals is the law wants to decrease by 75% the amount of organic materials that are going into the landfill by 2025. So this is a pretty big goal. And then the second goal is to increase by 20% the amount of food that is currently going to the landfill and have that feed people instead. So I kind of mentioned this a little bit during Marie's presentation, but the food that we're talking about to recover or to donate is still safe to eat. It has not yet been served. Generally, with packaged materials, it's not been open, it's not expired, so it's not like plate scraping. And then the way that this affects residents and businesses is that, one, everybody has to have a green bin at their curb and separate their food scraps and yard debris, make sure it goes in their green bin. In Sonoma County, that all goes to composting. In other parts of the state, they might send it to anaerobic digestion, which is where they make renewable gas out of it and they can fuel their trucks with it. We don't have that facility in Sonoma County, so everything goes composting. And then the second requirement mainly affects large businesses that produce a lot of food. For example, supermarkets or grocery stores, they have to donate their food, whatever they haven't been able to sell, to feed people. And again, emphasis that this food that they're required to donate is hasn't been served, still safe to eat, temperature is still safe, and it's not like you're digging through the trash or anything. It's still like safe to eat.
No half-eaten sandwiches.
No half-eaten sandwiches, yeah. Okay, so now moving on to the last part of my presentation, which is where I wanted to give a few examples of how you can take action and contribute to decreasing climate change or mitigating climate change. So one of our most popular programs is compost giveaway events. So people love compost here in Sonoma County, which I'm very grateful for, and we offer free compost at all these events throughout the county, and they're not like on a regular schedule, but I would say most of them are in the spring. And so this link, if you go to this link, you'll be able to see where all the events are posted. I don't have any right now lined up for 2024, but in the new year I will be scheduling and planning a lot of these. So keep this link bookmarked. And these are just a few pictures of the compost giveaway events, where it's just essentially a big pile of compost at a park, at a garden, or a school, and you can just come and like bring your buckets, bring your shovels, and grab as much compost as you want. Related to that, this is a compost rebate program that I also run, but it's mainly for people who buy a lot of compost. So we're talking mainly like businesses. Say if you're a landscaper, or you have a farm or a vineyard. If you buy a lot of compost, you can apply for this 10% rebate, and you must buy at least 30 cubic yards of compost in a year, and you can get up to $25,000 in rebate every year. So there is a agreement. It's just a 3-page, really short agreement that just lists out the terms and conditions on our website. And so you must sign that agreement first, and then any invoices for compost or mulch. Oh, I forgot to mention mulch is also part of this rebate. Compost or mulch purchases, the invoices have to be dated on the day of your agreement that you sign it, or after. Then I can give you that 10% rebate. So this has been pretty popular, and so just sign up. Free money. Okay, so one of the big problems with composting, unfortunately, is microplastics. So people put a lot of garbage in their green bin, and the two most problematic items are plastic and glass. Metal is not as big of a problem. I mean, we still don't want to put metal into the green bin, but at least there's a magnet for that. With plastic and glass, there's no magnet, so it gets stuck in there, and there's no easy way to get it all out. And as you can imagine, the plastics, is eventually going to be on the farm, be on your garden, and it's either going to migrate into your food and you're eating it, or it's going to go into the water and it's going to hurt. You're going to be drinking it, or it's going to hurt like fish. And the glass is also a really big issue, because just one bottle breaking in a pile of compost will contaminate or kind of just make that compost unusable. Because imagine if you're digging in your garden with your compost and there's glass in there, you're going to cut yourself. And it's also, there have been cases where farms spread the compost on their land and it hurts their animals when they're walking on it. So not great. And then here I do want to mention another really common question that we get is compostable plastics or biodegradable plastics. And people think they're so good, but the problem is they are still a disposable material, right? And we're really trying, like Marie had mentioned, best and highest use is to prevent waste altogether. So you really don't want to replace one kind of plastic with another kind of plastic. And the other problem with compostable plastic is at the compost facilities, well, I should back up. One of the main problems is that it's very difficult, like it's not regulated as well as it could be, or it's difficult to regulate because there are products out there in the market where they say something is compostable, but it's not actually, and it's just petroleum-based plastic. And then the other problem is that they look so much like regular petroleum-based plastic that at the compost facility they can't tell what is what. And so it's easier for the facility to just take all of that material out and throw it away in the garbage than to risk that cup breaking down, and if it's actual petroleum-based plastic, it's gonna hurt the compost. So the example I have at the bottom, the two pictures of the cups, one is compostable plastic and the other is normal petroleum-based plastic. You can't tell the difference. There's no way you can tell. So they're problematic, and I just tell people, please don't buy them because you have to throw them in the trash anyway. Okay, and then so one of the other issues is that, like I mentioned, people are putting a lot of trash in the green bin, and one of the most common items is we see produce stickers. So, you know, on your banana peel, on your orange peel, or onions, whatever, they're in there, and then obviously they degrade and become microplastics. Or people will just throw like their bag of carrots or bag of broccoli without taking off the twist tie or the bag itself. You have to take that off and throw the twist tie in the bag in the trash, you know, your produce into the green bin. So please separate that out. In the bottom left-hand corner is concrete. I don't know, some people put concrete in the green bin. And then, you know, you can see the bags, like it's so hard to tell, are they compostable bags or not? And then on the bottom right-hand corner are paper plates. Paper plates are not compostable, like Sloan had mentioned, if they are shiny, if they have some sort of flower design on it. They are coated in plastic, they have to go into the trash. The only kinds of plates that you can put into the compost are the brown, like they look like paper towels, like they're brown, and when you put water or grease on it, it just soaks right through. That means that there is no plastic on it, so you can compost that. And paper bags are fine, paper towels are fine. But yeah, this is a lot of trash that shouldn't be in the green bin. Okay, so kind of coming up to the end of my presentation here, like I mentioned, one of the most important things you can do is to keep your green bin and your blue bin clean. And it's best if you don't know, you're not sure about something, whether it goes in a green or blue bin, don't just throw it in and hope that it gets recycled or hope it gets composted, because that adds stress to the system and somebody has to pick it out. It's problematic. So instead, please contact us at Zero Waste Sonoma or contact your hauler, you know, Recology services most of Sonoma County. Please ask before you throw it in. These are the links and the numbers for Zero Waste Sonoma and all three haulers in Sonoma County. And then, you know, even though everybody now is required to have a curbside green bin, I still encourage people to compost locally. If you do it at home, if you do it in your backyard, that's great, because you're keeping more of that material local, and it's going to reduce the amount of miles that the trucks have to drive. So there are lots of really helpful videos. We recorded some workshops partnering with the UC Cooperative Extension to teach people how to do backyard composting or worm composting. So that link at the very bottom will show you how to do that. And then lastly, these are resources, just generally the UC Master Gardener program. Carbon Cycle Institute has a lot of scientific reports about the benefits of compost and just carbon sequestration, carbon farming. Marin Carbon Project also has a lot of scientific reports. They are the ones who did that study with the cows. And then BioCycle is a trusted newsletter that's free and online for people to read. And that's it. Thank you very much.